Just days before Kurt's death had been loaded with
He didn't even fly in yet when that was purchased. Do you see? Do you see?
If he'd been like totally suicidal from the outset, he would have used the gun that day.
Every Kurt Cobain
Why did he like go down
fan
and go through treatment?
and his daughter.
Just days before Kurt's death had been loaded with 3 shots.
I have just presented to you the evidence. He was murdered. Cold blood. Do something.
If he'd been like totally suicidal from the outset, he
Listen
would
to that
have
murderer
used the gun
talk.
that day probably or something. You know what I mean? Why did he like go down to try to go through treatment?
The shotgun purchased
Is basically assaulted and forced heroin. He is now rendered unconscious in front of people. He is then taken to the greenhouse, carried to the greenhouse. Is he alive at this point? I don't know. He's slumped or kind of fireman carried, arm in arm. He's kind of, let's say, like carried off an NFL field. He's carried out. And about 30 to 40 minutes later, a gunshot is heard. That is the shot through his mouth. After that, these people stay in the house. The killers of Kurt Cobain are Dylan CARLSON and Daniel Clint Rich. They call him Danny Rich. Everyone knows who Dylan is. No one's ever heard the name Daniel Clint Rich. Now you have. The accessories, or if you want to call them witnesses, I call them accessories. Michael Callie DeWitt, Renee Navarrete, Jessica Hopper, Jennifer Adamson, and Bonnie Dillard. These people have been caught talking about it before, and even though we say, oh, that's hearsay, someone said this, I'm not a judge, I'm not the cops, I'm the storyteller. I solve murders, I kill killers, that's what I do. Those people never spoke, they covered up this murder, and it's shameful. As for the killers, and for Dylan and Danny, they have to reckon with themselves and with God eventually.
If he'd been like totally suicidal from the outset, he would have used the gun that day probably or something. You know what I mean? Why did he like go down to try to go through treatment?
I think I've made my point. Now, I have proven that Kurt was not even in town to buy that gun. And the receipt shows it now, right? You saw the receipt? So we know that that's a lie. Kurt did not buy that gun. He did not. Now, what are you going to do about it? Every Kurt Cobain fan, rise up. Rise up. Rise up like Kurt would.